Hello and welcome back to the Weighted Native Chronicles. What we're going to deal with today is that new law that's being proposed in Canada by Trudeau to lock down the sale and transfer of handguns in Canada. Some of our American viewers might be interested in this, but especially Canadians. We're being hit with this out of the blue. Many of us are handgun owners, and we have a lot of money invested in handguns, and we get a lot of enjoyment out of them, and we like to be able to pass them on, and so our children can inherit them. And this new proposed law, unless it changes, is going to really gum up the works on this. So what I would like to do is I'd like to give a little bit of clarity on this subject. If you want a more professional analysis of this, then I encourage you to go see the YouTube channel called Runkle of the Bailey, where Ian Runkle, he is an actual lawyer, can discuss this matter in greater depth. But for myself, I'm not a lawyer, and I didn't even sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. But I'm just a regular gun owner with some familiarity with the gun laws. And there is a topic specifically that I think deserves some attention, which I haven't seen Ian deal with yet. And I'm quite sure I'm correct on this, but see a lawyer first. Don't follow my advice. I'm just going to show you what the regulation changes state and what the current regulations require, because there is one area where the regulations, if I'm reading this right, they don't affect you for a certain type of handgun owner. Are you ready for this? Okay. What way to explain this? I've got here several handguns. And I'm going to show you that I have 4 handguns on the table here. And if I'm reading this law right, there are 2 of them for sure that won't be affected by the regulation, and possibly 3, very likely 3. Let's take this one here. That's a Remington XP 100. What do you think of this? Is that going to be affected by the law? Yes, it is. This one is a beautiful handgun. I've made this stock myself from scratch, starting off with a square piece of cherry wood, and I put about 300 hours of work into this gun and did all kinds of refinements, glass bedding and stuff like that. It's a super accurate gun. It was used in International Handgun Metallic Silhouette Association competitions back in the 80s mainly. We don't do that much anymore in Canada, unfortunately, but this gun is covered by that change as being something that once I die, it has to be given to the police, and then they're going to just destroy this like a piece of junk, because they don't care, right? They don't care about, what you own, because they don't own handguns, so it doesn't affect them, right? And this is just to keep everybody safe. So if the regulations are correct, and I'm going to show you a copy of them, if this was for Olympic shooting events, then I'd be able to keep it. Then it would be able to be transferred, because liberals, they like Olympics and stuff like that. Hey, that's okay for gun use. You'd be able to buy handguns for Olympic events, international type stuff. But unless International Handgun Metallic Silhouette becomes an Olympic sport all of a sudden, which I don't think it will, it's a long range sport where you shoot at steel targets 200 yards away and you have to knock them down. Really highly accurate shooting required with lots of power, which is why this one shoots a 7mm bench rest Remington cartridge. It's not going to be in the Olympics. They like 22s and stuff like that. Okay, so not allowed. Sorry I'm dragging this on, but I had to vent a little bit on that gun. I love that gun. It's very special. Another gun. Well, how about this? This is a Smith & Wesson Model 29-3 with a 10 5/8" barrel, 44 Magnum. I'll explain, this gun you could keep, but only certain kind of owners will, and I'll get into that. Okay, I'm sorry to keep you in suspense, but just go over this real quick. This one here, now we're looking at a Smith & Wesson Model 917 22 caliber. This one, I'm pretty sure, for that certain type of owner, will be you'll be allowed to continue owning it and hand it down to your children under certain circumstances, which I'll explain. And finally, a prohib. So this is a 357 Magnum. Yes, I do have a 12.6 license, and this gun could also be handed down under the regulations change as they're being proposed if you are meeting certain conditions. This is only a 2 3/4" barrel. I know it's prohib, and you think, well, you can't do nothing with it. Yes, you can. You can take this out on the trap line, and that leads me to what our point is. So let's take a quick look at what the proposed changes are, and keeping in mind that this could change, but it's not very likely. Okay, take a look at that there. And what it says is the Chief Firearms Officer may authorize the transfer of a handgun to an individual only if the individual needs the handgun, A, to protect the life of that individual or of other individuals. That would probably be, like security guards and stuff like that. Or B, for use in connection with his or her lawful profession or occupation. And that's the part we're going to deal with here. The third one, C, is of course all your the liberal friends in the Olympics. Of course we got to let them keep their guns because they're special. But for everybody else, target shooters, sports shooters, this regulation is going to prevent you from ever selling or buying another handgun in your life. Sorry to say that, and I'm not gloating about this, but I think the video is important in one respect because of that point B, for use in connection with his or her lawful profession or occupation. When I read that, I thought about that for a second and says, that reminds me of the wording in another regulation that I've seen, and I'll show you that one next, okay? Okay, that's authorization to carry. Using a firearm for wilderness protection. In general, the only firearms allowed for wilderness protection are non-restricted rifles and shotguns. However, you may be authorized to carry a handgun or restricted long gun for wilderness protection or for lawful occupational purposes if you are a Canadian resident, you have a license that allows you to possess restricted firearms. You must also, and here's where the key wording comes in, be a licensed professional trapper or need protection from wild animals while working at your lawful occupation, most often in remote wilderness locations. So that part there where we said working at your lawful occupation, that go back to the previous one, the proposed change to the regulation. Point B says in connection with his or her lawful profession or occupation. Okay, so this is the main point of this video, so that I'm just trying to highlight something that probably Ian Runkle may not get around to, but I hope he does, because I'd like to have some backup on this. But the wording is the same, and it leaves a little bit in question, maybe the 22, because what we're talking about in the case of a 22 handgun is that is for dispatch purposes. So The Canadian government allows authorizations to carry for a .22 handgun, but it's a different type of authorization to carry. It's for dispatch purposes. So trappers go out, they trap animals, like you get a wolverine or something like that, and they're pretty vicious, and they may be in a leg hold trap or something like that, and you have to dispatch them. You're carrying a lot of gear with you. You're pulling sleds and stuff like that, and buckets of bait, and you just can't carry rifles with you everywhere. So the Canadian government at least gives them a break and says, yeah, okay, we can understand you, somebody like you would need a handgun, and they let you have an authorization to carry for a .22 handgun. That's one kind of authorization. There is a separate authorization, and that one is more for the .44 Magnum and like a .357 Magnum. .357 Magnum is about the minimum that you can use and call it a weapon for protection against wildlife, because anything smaller is kind of getting into silly land, right? So that is an authorization to carry for wilderness protection. Now, if we take a look quickly back at the previous sheet that I was looking at, reading off to you there, it says there, you must also be a licensed professional trapper or need protection from wild animals. So that's those two classes of guns there. Whereas the proposed change to the regulation states for use in connection with his or her lawful profession or occupation. So I would assume that my reading of that is that the .22 would be covered by that, because it's not talking about for protection in point B there. It's just saying that it is a handgun for use in a lawful occupation or profession. The authorization to carry legislation law already in effect does state that you can get an authorization to carry for because it is a lawful, trapping is a lawful occupation or profession, or any profession that you're out in the bush and you need protection for. So yeah, and I do have an authorization to carry, so that's why it does affect me in that way. I guess I should have mentioned that earlier. So I do have a dog in this fight, I guess what you could call it. But this doesn't apply to a whole lot of people, but I think especially for trappers out there, they should be aware of this, that is how I think this regulation applies to them. And there are others who have authorizations to carry. I know of, for instance, wildlife photographer who has an authorization to carry. They're not that uncommon. Hunting guides can get them. I know of hunting guides that have that. There's another type of authorization to carry that people very often get confused with, and I just want to touch on that because it comes up time and time and time again where people say, oh, there's only like one person in Canada, or maybe two people in Canada that have an authorization to carry. That is a authorization to carry for protection. And that is, let's see, do they actually mention that here? Yeah, the point A in that proposed legislation, or regulation change, to protect the life of that individual or of other individuals. Those are that kind of authorizations that are very rare. Maybe there's a handful of them in Canada, and it's really difficult to get them. You have to have really solid, convincing proof that somebody's basically out to kill you. Like you could be, I think one of them is a lawyer, former Crown prosecutor or something like that, and you put in a bunch of bad guys in jail, and they made threats, and you can prove that these threats were made, that they're going to do something to you. I think that it's for really extreme cases like that. So as a result, there's only very few of them, of these authorizations issued. So the regulations change doesn't stop the transfer and purchase of handguns for individuals like that. But then there's also your Olympic shooters, which of course they're getting off scot-free, and because we've got to make Canada look good in the sporting world, can't hamper that. But that the B clause at least they're giving a break to people that use a handgun as part of their lawful occupation. So that's basically the breakdown of this law here. As I said before, go see Ian Runkle. Runkle of the Bailey is the name of his channel. He's got a lot of good information on there. And if you want more stuff covered by him, then mention it in the comments. And I think he reads them and takes those as cues for future videos. So he does a lot of good work for the firearms community. So I encourage you to do that. Also, while you're at it, before you leave this screen, if I haven't bugged you too much, then click like on this video to help this content get out there on YouTube. That's what YouTube uses for building their algorithms and puts videos in front of people. Also subscribe to the channel, please. It really does help this keep things like this going. And there's even what they call a super like button on videos. Take a look at it. It says super like. You click on that, it's going to just ask you how much money you want to give this guy. So you can buy me a coffee if you like. Whatever you can do, that all helps too, and it's very much appreciated. So from the Weighted Native Chronicles, as I like to say every time, God bless, and catch you next time.
Yide to Deneza getting careful. That's